This is Glenn Klinger with Klinger Real Estate, and today I'm going to explain to you the South Carolina Disclosure of Real Estate Brokerage Relationships form. It's a mandatory form that informs buyers and sellers about the types of agency relationships that they can have with a real estate agent. By law, this form must be presented to you at the first practical opportunity or substantial contact. Before you begin to work with a real estate licensee, it is important for you to know the difference between a broker in charge and associated licensees. The broker in charge is the person in charge of a real estate brokerage firm. Associated licensees may work only through a broker in charge. In other words, when you choose to work with any real estate licensee, your business relationship is legally with the brokerage firm and not with the associated licensee. A real estate brokerage firm and its associated licensees can provide buyers and sellers valuable real estate services, whether in the form of basic customer service or through client-level agency representation. The services you can expect will depend upon the legal relationship you establish with the brokerage firm. It is important for you to discuss the following information with the real estate licensee and agree on whether in your business relationship you will be a customer or a client. Unless or until you enter into a written agreement with the brokerage firm for agency representation, you are considered a customer of the brokerage firm, and the brokerage firm will not act as your agent. As a customer, you should not expect the brokerage firm or its licensees to promote your best interest. Customer service does not require a written agreement. Therefore, you are not committed to the brokerage firm in any way unless a transaction broker agreement or compensation agreement obligates you otherwise. Transaction broker means a real estate brokerage firm that provides customer service to a buyer, a seller, or both in a real estate transaction. A transaction broker may be a single agent of a party in a transaction giving the other party customer service. A transaction broker also may facilitate a transaction without representing either party. What is a client, for example, if you list your home and you enter into an agreement with the real estate agency, then you are hiring that person as a seller's agent. The seller's agent must act in the best interest of the seller, which includes marketing the property and negotiating on the seller's behalf and disclosing any material facts about the buyer that could affect the sale. Buyers who interact with the seller's agent should understand that the agent's primary loyalty is to the seller. Now, what about buyer agency? A broker that exclusively represents a buyer is responsible for helping the buyer find a suitable property, negotiate on behalf of the buyer, and provide advice. Throughout the process, sellers should know that a buyer's agent is obligated to act on the best interest of the buyer. You can become a client of the brokerage firm. Clients receive more services than customers. If client status is offered by the real estate brokerage firm, you can become a client by entering into a written agency agreement, requiring the brokerage firm and its associated licensees to act as an agent on your behalf and promote your best interests. If you choose to become a client, you will be asked to confirm in your written representation agreement that you received this agency relationships disclosure document in a timely manner. A seller becomes a client of a real estate brokerage firm by signing a formal listing agreement with the brokerage firm. For a seller to become a client, this agreement must be in writing and must clearly establish the terms of the agreement and the obligations of both the seller and the brokerage firm, which becomes the agent for the seller. A buyer becomes a client of a real estate brokerage firm by signing a formal buyer agency agreement with the brokerage firm. For a buyer to become a client, this agreement must be in writing and must clearly establish the terms of the agreement and the obligations of both the buyer and the brokerage firm, which becomes the agent for the buyer. If you enter into a written agency agreement as a client, the real estate brokerage has the following client-level duties: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable skill and care. Client-level services also include advice, counsel, and assistance in negotiations. Single agency. When the brokerage firm represents only one client in the same transaction, the seller or the buyer, it is called single agency. Dual agency. Dual agency exists when the real estate brokerage firm has two clients in one transaction, a seller client and a buyer client. At the time you sign an agency agreement, you may be asked to acknowledge whether you would consider giving written consent allowing the brokerage firm to represent both you and the other client in a disclosed dual agency relationship. Disclosed dual agency. In a disclosed dual agency, the brokerage firm's representation duties are limited because the buyer and seller have recognized conflicts of interest. Both clients' interests are represented by the brokerage firm. As a disclosed dual agent, the brokerage firm and its associated licensees cannot advocate on behalf of one client over the other and cannot disclose confidential client information concerning the price negotiations, terms, or factors motivating the buyer client to buy or the seller client to sell. Each dual agency agreement contains the names of both the seller clients and the buyer clients and identifies the property. Designated agency. In designated agency, a broker in charge may designate individual associated licensees to act solely on behalf of each client. Designated agents are not limited by the brokerage firm's agency relationship with the other client, but instead have a duty to promote the best interest of their clients, including negotiating a price. The broker in charge remains a disclosed dual agent for both clients and ensures the assigned agents fulfill their duties to the respective clients. At the time you sign an agency agreement, you may be asked to acknowledge whether you would consider giving written consent, allowing the brokerage firm to designate a representative for you, and one for the other client in a designated agency. Each designated agency agreement contains the names of both the seller clients and the buyer clients and identifies the property. It's your choice. As a real estate consumer in South Carolina, it is your choice as to the type and nature of services you receive. You can choose to remain a customer and represent yourself, with or without a transaction broker agreement. You can choose to hire the brokerage firm for representation through a written agency agreement. If represented by the brokerage firm, you can decide whether to go forward under the shared services of dual agency or designated agency, or to remain in single agency. If you plan to become a client of a brokerage firm, the licensee will explain the agreement to you fully and answer questions you may have. You can always seek legal advice before signing any form.